Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Today is August 3rd. We are now 92 days away from the elections in November, and we are now officially today just 3 months away exactly from those elections. So today is going to be our next presidential election prediction video. Pretty soon, we are going to also be coming out with a new Senate election prediction video. So you know the drill, west to east. We're going to obviously cut down on some of the more surefire safe states and just get right into it with the more swing states. So let's get right into it. In the state of Alaska, as we've talked about, the state of Alaska is narrowing up in comparison to the Senate race between Al Gross and Dan Sullivan, but as of now, Donald Trump doesn't really have a whole lot to worry about in the state. I'm going to put this as a likely for him. Hawaii, on the other hand, will be a safe Democratic state, and Joe Biden takes the first lead of the night at 4-3. In the state of Washington, obviously a site of a lot of the big protests, nothing to really discuss here, and the first double-digit state is in favor of Joe Biden. In the state of Oregon, obviously kind of the same deal here. The protests going on and everything we've seen happening in Portland is obviously pretty disconcerting, I think, to a lot of independents. Because as we know, independents in this country have a sort of a very patriotic streak to them that's quantifiable, that's been shown in the data over and over and over again. And so that kind of thing, if I had to guess, is going to rub off on the wrong way, as if Oregon was any kind of real swing state to begin with. California is also a safe Democratic state. I would expect Joe Biden to win by potentially 25 or more points in the state of California, and as always, he takes the biggest electoral prize of the night, 55 electoral votes. Idaho will go red. Utah will go red. Nevada, I think, will go blue by a lean margin, but that's not to say that it's sort of. There are two different kinds of classifications. One is whether or not it is like classifying it depending on whether or not you think it will actually go a certain way, and the other is whether or not you feel as though it will actually just depend on that margin. So, like in this particular case with Nevada, I'm pretty much certain it will go blue, considering this has become a blue state entirely. Whereas it'll probably only happen by a lean margin. So it's sort of a safe state, but by a lean margin, if that makes sense. All right, in the state of Arizona, as we know, the Democrats now have more House members from the state of Arizona than the Republicans. There is obviously this has become one of the first swing states, that we're going to talk to, especially on this portion of the country. Kyrsten Sinema, a bisexual woman, won that Senate race over Martha McSally in 2018, and all signs point to Martha McSally losing a second time, only this time to Mark Kelly, the former astronaut, the former representative. So I have this as also a likely Democrat because between Mark Kelly's surging in the polls and Joe Biden also, even though Mark Kelly's outperforming Joe Biden, I think that this is more one of those characterizations where even though it'll probably become a lean or even a tilt margin, I think it's pretty likely that Joe Biden's going to win this state, and that's 11 votes that Hillary Clinton didn't have last time, so that's pretty substantial. In Montana, we've talked over and over again about how bizarre this state is, but on the presidential level, there's basically nothing to discuss. This is easily going to go for Donald Trump. It's possible that it could end up as a likely margin, but it's still very possible he could win by 20 points. Wyoming, you know the drill there. In the state of Colorado, it technically still qualifies as a swing state on 538 and some of the other um, analyzers, but all in all, even with the Senate race here, pretty clearly going to John Hickenlooper. I don't really consider this too worrisome a state for Joe Biden. That's going to go blue, and the same is going to happen in New Mexico, another open Senate race. But so far, as you can tell, Joe Biden's having a pretty good night as he's taking care of business in his base states and has 11 votes that Hillary Clinton didn't have. North Dakota, even with all those years of Kent Conrad and then later on Heidi Heitkamp, safe Republican state. South Dakota, kind of similar to North Dakota. Tim Johnson, the Democrat, as we've talked about on this channel, the South Dakota Democratic Party is known to do outstanding work across the country. They're known as one of the best parties for either establishment throughout the country, but it's not going to be enough to defeat Donald Trump. Nebraska, safe Republican state. I keep messing this up. But on this one, I do believe that this will go blue. And that's pretty substantial. That's another vote that Joe Biden is going to pick up from Donald Trump. That third district that goes blue, the Lincoln and Omaha area, is going to go blue. And that didn't happen in 2016. And so that's another vote that the Democrats can pick up. So there's 11 in Arizona and 1 in Nebraska. In the state of Kansas, I think that this primary here between Chris Kobach and Roger Marshall is obviously pretty intriguing. And, whoever ends up facing Barbara Bollier is going to have a bit of a tough time on their hand. She is no easy customer, rather, and she, of course, is a former Republican who's become a little bit deserted from the party. But on the presidential level, I'm going to label this as a likely, just because I think this is going to narrow up. In the state of Oklahoma, easily Republican. Donald Trump won every single county in this state. Now, here we go. Here's a big one. In the state of Texas, 38 electoral votes, and this has obviously become one of the more interesting races across the board in this election. Obviously, in 2018, Beto O'Rourke, the upstart young star Senate candidate from out here in El Paso, came pretty close to defeating Ted Cruz. He lost by about 215,000 votes. Now, polling also indicates that the Democrats have themselves a real chance to defeat Donald Trump here. They're in a virtual tie on the presidential level here. Now, people have been recently pretty quick to take those shifts in polling at face value a little bit. And I think that's a little bit incorrect, because I think, in 2018, that Senate race was pretty much perfectly tailored to the Democrats. Ted Cruz is deeply unpopular across the country. Basically, every demographic disapproves of him. Latinos obviously disapprove of him. Democrats disapprove. Republicans disapprove. Trump supporters disapprove. He's kind of universally hated in Washington. And you combine that with the Democrats having a moderate who was very, very well liked across the state, and he still lost. And he did, even though it was close. He did lose by over 200,000 votes, and the final tally was, I believe, 51.2 to 48.8. That's that's a little. That's obviously pretty close. Or no, I'm sorry. I believe it was 51.7 to 48.3, something like that. So 48% of the vote, already over 48% of the vote, is pretty good. But that he still lost in an election that obviously went in the Democratic Party's favor. And the other Senate race here, John Cornyn against MJ Hager, is easily going the Republicans' way. So I'm going to label this as a tilt Republican, still in the favor of Donald Trump. And, obviously that kind of saves his behind, because having already lost Arizona and Nebraska, if he loses Texas, there's absolutely no way he can win this election. There's no way he could win this election if he loses Texas under any scenario. Now, obviously, keep an eye on it for 24 when Ted Cruz is up, and another 4 years of demographic shifts are going to favor the Democratic Party, because, as we've outlined many times, the Sun Belt is definitely shifting their way. Minnesota was a state that the Republicans had targeted for a long time over these 4 years, but it's kind of slipped out of their grasp. Of course, Hillary Clinton only won it by 1.5%. However many thousands of votes that is, but since then the Democrats have really rebounded well. There were 3 statewide races: Tina Smith, Tim Walz, and Amy Klobuchar, who all won their elections. Tina Smith is up again in 2020 as she is looking to serve her first full 6-year term, and all signs point to her having a pretty easy time winning. Of course, that's Al Franken's old seat. So all in all, right now, of course, the side of the Minneapolis protests right here, kind of in the eastern portion of the state, point to this being a pretty safe Democratic retention. Probably will go in a likely margin, but it's a safe state. Iowa has been a little bit of a disappointment for the Democratic Party, because they've obviously long pointed to this state as a potential pickup. Well, the reality is, after Barack Obama won it in 2008 and 2012, and Tom Harkin, of course, was a senator from this state all those years. The problem is it's pretty much shifted to the right, even though in some ways it's also shifting back to the left. It's a pretty elastic state. It's hard to figure this one out. Both senators are Republican, Joni Ernst and Charles Grassley. The governor is Republican, Kim Reynolds, even though that race narrowed up in the 2018 midterms. But there are 4 House seats in the state. 3 of them are controlled by the Democrats, and the other one up here in the southwest portion of the state was for many years controlled by Steve King, who's no longer there. So it's kind of a it's sort of a split decision every election cycle in the state of Iowa, but all the polling has indicated that Donald Trump is going to survive here. So I'm going to label this as a lean, possibly could narrow up to a tilt, but right now that's a lean. And so even though he's underwater here, having lost 12 votes between Arizona and 1 district in Nebraska and didn't manage to grab Nevada or Minnesota, he has avoided disaster in Texas and hung on to Iowa, which was a target for the Democrats. Missouri has long been a state that the Democrats have talked about potentially being flippable for them, but I don't really see it this time. I'm going to label it likely. I know there was that one poll that had Joe Biden up by 2 points there. I wouldn't read too much into that. Arkansas, safe Republican state. Louisiana, safe Republican state. The Senate races here are complete jokes this time around, which is amazing how Arkansas has shifted so quickly. All right, in the state of Mississippi, the largest minority population in the country. As a result, I think that's going to tighten this race up to a lean margin. Even though it's pretty certain Donald Trump is going to win here, I just think that this margin, compared with Mike Espy running again against an unpopular incumbent in Sidney Hyde-Smith, gives the Democrats, reason to believe that they have themselves an actual puncher's chance, if you will, in this state, even though it's pretty clear that they're not going to end up winning it. In the state of Alabama, it's kind of the same thing. I think it's a little less close than Mississippi, but in the state of Alabama, Doug Jones is in all likelihood going to go down against Tommy Tuberville, and as a result, I don't see Donald Trump really having any problem in these 2 states. Florida, okay, big one here. Obviously, 29 electoral votes, and the reality of the situation is the Democratic Party has kind of had their heart broken by this state time and time again. In 2000, they obviously lost in about as close an election as you could possibly have. They didn't win it in 2004. They did manage to win it in 2008 and in 2012. Both times Barack Obama pulled that off. Sorry for all these emails here. It's a busy morning at the employer. But as of now, what we're seeing here is the Democrats managed to flip a couple House seats down in the southeast portion of the state, but they weren't able to get the senator reelected Bill Nelson, and they lost the governorship race. It's the 4th Republican governor in a row, Ron DeSantis. So as of now, though, the polling indicates it's Joe Biden's state to lose. And that's why I have this as a lean Democrat, because the polling is so one-sided right now in this state, and that pretty much puts Joe Biden over the top, even though he obviously has over 100 votes to procure. You can tell here he's already flipped 41 votes, and Hillary Clinton, as we know, came out 38 votes short with her base states. In the state of Georgia, Joe Biden has a chance here. Most recent poll had him up by 1 point there. I think the polling average has Trump up by I think under 2 points now. The Senate races here, there are 2 Senate races, one of which is really competitive between David Perdue and Jon Ossoff, although David Perdue, even though it's very close, he consistently leads. He leads by very low margins, but he does consistently lead. And of course, the Brian Kemp-Stacey Abrams race was very, very tight a couple of years back and full of controversy. As a result, I think this is tilt Republican. I think Joe Biden's going to come pretty darn close here in Georgia. I think he'll get 48.5% of the vote, but Democrats just haven't really shown enough consistency in this state to really pull this off. I think this is maybe the next Arizona. Of course, this is also a state where it's famous for low turnout and for suppression, and that obviously helps the Republicans. South Carolina, I know some people have pointed to this state as sort of a potential opportunity. I don't see that happening. Lindsey Graham might have somewhat of a challenge on his hands, given the amount of fundraising we've seen from Jamie Harrison, but it's too red a state right now. Tennessee, safe Republican state. Kentucky, safe Republican state. West Virginia, safe Republican state. Now, in North Carolina, obviously we've seen some pretty fascinating developments here, given that Cal Cunningham, for whatever reason, the former veteran, the former state senator, is totally outperforming Joe Biden. And it's really hard to know why. Um, Joe Biden is usually leading in the state by 2 points, 3 points, 4 points, usually within the margin of error. Whereas Cal Cunningham has just run away with this race, and it's beginning to join Arizona and Colorado as pretty safe pickup opportunities for the Democrats. That combined with Roy Cooper being on the ballot with 2 House districts in the southern portion of the state likely going to the Democrats is giving them a ton of optimism right now in this state. And so as a result, I have this as tilt Democrat. I think that it's also possible that just as Donald Trump won this state with a plurality in 2016, I think it's very possible that that pardon me that Joe Biden could also win with a plurality in this state. So as of now, in the state of Virginia, there's nothing to really discuss there. So as you can see, there's another, look at these flips we've already seen here. 29 votes in Florida, 15 in North Carolina, 11 in Arizona, and 1 in Nebraska. 20 safe votes go Joe Biden's way in Illinois. He's already up to 197. 11 votes in Indiana. Of course, this was a state that Barack Obama did manage to win in 2008, but not in 2012. And it's pretty much slipped out of the Democrats' grasp. They also lost that Senator Joe Donnelly. Okay, now in the state of Ohio, this state is quietly pretty darn competitive right now. Okay, an Ohio Media Collaborative, which to be fair is an unranked pollster, has Joe Biden leading by 4 points, 46 to 42 in the most recent poll that came out just today. And so, unbelievably, the RCP polling average in the state of Ohio has Joe Biden up by 2.3 points in the state of Ohio. No one is talking about that. I think it's because people just inherently expect the state that went to Donald Trump by such a large margin in 2016 is just going to, even though it might narrow up, it's and having elected Mike DeWine, it's not going to go Joe Biden's way. But Joe Biden's leading there right now. He really is. Now, a couple things to consider. The Republicans have also pulled their ads out of some other swing states and are going to focus on states like this, which basically gives you a sense of where they believe they are in this election. Because they, being so far away as to, essentially give up on states that were integral to their win. Now they're just back to their general base states. So even though Joe Biden is just barely ahead here, I think it's going to go to Trump by about 1.5 points or something. This is going to be one of the latest calls, I think, on election night. I think Joe Biden has a real shot to win Ohio because, again, as we've stated now, he's ahead in the polling average. That's really remarkable. In the state of Maryland, safe Democratic state, another 10 votes. Joe Biden's now over 200. All right, now let's go to Wisconsin. This was really the only state that had the polling completely wrong. Everyone wants to talk about how wrong the polls were and how misled we were. Well, that's not really true. As we've talked about, Wisconsin was basically the only state in the entire country that went the Republicans' way when it, all signs indicated that it wouldn't. Hillary Clinton led by over 6 points on election day, and she lost by about 0.7. So that was obviously pretty surprising. Since then, the Democrats have done great in this state. Tammy Baldwin, popular incumbent senator, won by 11 points. Scott Walker, very well-known national Republican, lost his reelection to Tony Evers. There was a Supreme Court race earlier this year that the Democrats won and picked up. That was a big one for them. There was a state Senate special election real early on, I believe in the first year of Trump's term, that went the Democrats' way. That was big, and they also continuously lead in the polling here. And so as a result, I have this as a lean Democrat. And I know that some people kind of expect this to shift back, but in fact, if you apply right now the same shift in the polling to Donald Trump that we're seeing for Joe Biden, look where that puts him. That still puts him, winning by a little less than 0.5 point. And so, as you can tell, Joe Biden's basically sweeping all this. Yeah, he didn't get Texas, he didn't get Georgia, didn't get Ohio or Iowa, but he's gotten Arizona, he's gotten Wisconsin, North Carolina, and Florida. Hard to do much better than that. Michigan, the Republicans are literally waving the white flag here. It's amazing. And they've basically said we are not, they've literally pulled their ads out of the state and giving away 16 electoral votes. And what's amazing about that is if you think, that basically means that not only are they surrendering in the state of Michigan, a state that the Democrats also won 2 statewide races in 2018, but it was also the closest race among the Rust Belt states in which Donald Trump won by 0.27%. But what it means to just give up on this state is it basically means that, um, what it basically means is you combine this with Florida and it's an easy win for the Democrats. There's your, over 38 votes. And so I don't understand that strategy necessarily. So I have it as likely Democratic. And there's another 16. In the state of Pennsylvania, Scrappy Scranton Joe, as we know, a consistent polling lead there. Bob Casey, Tom Wolf, each easily winning re-election. Patrick Toomey, the Republican senator, faces a tough re-election bid in 2 years. Even though there's a large school of thought that believes that these states are shifting to the right a little by little. Right now, I have this as lean Democrat. And I think that it's really worth understanding. The reason I keep, characterizing these swing states in such a manner is because it's pretty clear that, the states that, the Republican Party is having trouble in are the states that, are obviously going a certain direction and are not, and have been pretty favorable to the Democratic Party. And a national polling mood that has him, Donald Trump consistently behind in the national polling averages, it's pretty clear who's going to win these races. Rhode Island, safe Democratic state. New Jersey, another double-digit state, safe Democrat. Connecticut, 7 votes, and there it is. There's 277. Rhode Island, safe Democratic state. Rather, that was Delaware earlier. D.C., the most liberal area in the country. Massachusetts, even though there's a competitive Democratic Senate primary, safe Democrat. Vermont, safe Democrat. New York, safe Democrat. New Hampshire was a target for the Republicans, no longer. I'll label it as likely just to appease them. And then in the state of Maine, I think that, I'll even be kind of generous here to Donald Trump and give the statewide vote there to Joe Biden. The first district, I believe it is, to Joe Biden. I can never keep this straight. And then this district, this last one, barely to Donald Trump, give him 1 vote there. So there's your map. Okay, 334 to 204. That's 28 votes more than Donald Trump got in 2016, and Joe Biden outperformed Hillary Clinton by over 100 electoral votes. Flipped Arizona, flipped this district in Nebraska, flipped Wisconsin, flipped Michigan, flipped Pennsylvania, flipped North Carolina, and flipped Florida. You can also imagine that on this map, the Democrats are going to have quite a good time on the Senate map as well. So there you have it. With 3 months to go, this is the state of this race. And Donald Trump has quite a bit of ground to make up. And clearly, given the fact that he's just yanking himself out of Michigan, that gives you quite a sense of where he is right now. So thank you guys so much again for watching this video. Please hit the subscribe button if you haven't already, and comment down in the suggestions below. As always, I will do my best to answer any questions you may have in another video, and continue to make videos tailor-based to what my viewers would like to make me do. So thank you guys again so much for watching, and I'll see you in November.